All right, we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. Today on the Huddle Up 2018 Draft Show, Carl and guest host Scott Porter take on an entire offseason for the Broncos and what they view as their ideal outcome. This is the Huddle Up 2018 Draft Show. Happy birthday, Nick. Once again, Broncos country, it is time to huddle up draft style. I am your host, Carl Dumler. And unfortunately, listeners, Nick is getting a much-deserved day off to go celebrate his 26th birthday. I would highly recommend, if you get the chance, to go wish him a happy birthday on Twitter at NickKindleMHH. Eric also happened to have a family birthday going on today. So what that means for you listeners is that we have a guest host today by the name of Scott Porter. Now, listeners, I want to let you know that this podcast doesn't happen without Scott. I know for those who have been with us from the very beginning, Nick and I have both talked about this man, and he is the one that actually brought us two together. Just to give you a little background, what kind of happened was I was running or moderating, I guess, a Broncos message board. And it just so happened that Scott and a few others from another message board was it shut down?
Yep, it was shut down.
It was shut down. Okay, yeah. And they ended up finding their way to the one that I was on. And Scott and I got to talking football. And as you know, we love talking draft. And Scott loves talking about the draft. He'll talk about this here in just a little bit, but he has his own draft website. And Nick loved talking draft with him because they're both from Iowa. They're Iowa boys. I guess I'm a little outnumbered here. But ended up, Scott thought it would be a really good idea for Nick and I to get connected and start talking football together. And next thing you know, Nick and I start writing for different websites, and he gets the opportunity to start a podcast. And the editor kind of asked him who he would like to be able to do the podcast with, and my name came up. And boom, here you go. Huddle Up Draft Podcast has come into existence, all because a man named Scott Porter decided to introduce the two of us. So, Scott, we really appreciate that. We really appreciate all the opportunities that have opened up just because of that introduction. And it's just been kind of a crazy. What?
I was going to say, Carl, going back on that story, I want the listeners to know that Nick and I actually met. I was eating at a Hy-Vee cafe where Nick worked. And Nick saw my Bronco gear, saw my Bronco phone and my clothes and all that, and just took off with it. I never thought I'd meet another person in Iowa that loved the draft as much as me. And I think it was just a destiny that Nick and I connected and then connected him to you. So
perfect. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just been kind of crazy how this has all happened for the three of us. And we're still all talking on that same message board still today. And love it there. Absolutely. Love talking Broncos draft. I mean, we talk about it here on the podcast a ton. We talk about it all day. Talk about it on the message board. It's just everywhere. We're obsessed with it. So you listeners get the bulk of what just has been building up in us every single week. And like I said, I'm just excited to have Scott here. And Scott, I thought it'd be great for the listeners just to hear a little bit of your background and how you got into the draft, how you got into your current job and everything that you're doing, because you have one of the most unique jobs that probably none of our listeners, they might not even know anybody that's in this other than just the professional guys.
Sure.
You know, the big name in the NFL, but just to know a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I'll try to keep this as short as possible, but I was in about second grade. I was pretty obsessed with the NFL at an early age. I can always remember my mom reading the paper that the NFL draft was coming about. So when I was in second grade, I watched my first NFL draft at my great-grandma's house. Didn't know a lot of the players in the draft, knew a couple. I knew the Broncos' first round pick, Mike Kroll. I'd seen him at Nebraska. And, you know, Russell Merrill in the first pick in that draft. I just kind of fell in love with the draft. And the next year I wanted to watch it, and the next year and the next year. And I just started, spiking my interest. Every year I wanted to know more and more players, so I watched more and more college football. Then when I got into college, I was actually at, the message board that we migrated over to Sports Hoopla, where you and I are at. And a guy with a lot of web content experience decided, to get a draft website going. So we did that. one thing kind of led to another. At first, we kind of did player, rankings and columns, and next thing I know, I'm getting agents and players hitting me up to do interviews, to get them a little exposure on the website. So I started doing a lot of that, which then kind of led to what I'm doing now. A lot of these interviewed players that I did, I had a lot of NFL guys. I could go down a list, but I won't bore you there. But a lot of these guys who did not get in the NFL, I kind of seeked an opportunity for them in indoor football, which is much like the AFL, but it's called the IFL. It's actually more geared towards outdoor football rules, so the film for them is actually better, to go up to the CFL and NFL. And the local team, the Cedar Rapids Titans, 2 years ago actually kind of made me their head recruiter. So the last couple of years, I had been kind of bouncing players around different teams, Green Bay, Nebraska, Colorado, teams like that. And then I'm doing more hands-on with Cedar Rapids this year. So I've been doing a lot of the recruiting. The season's starting up right now. We got a lot of players flying in. It's been bad weather in Iowa, so a couple of people have missed flights. There's been a lot of delays, so it's been a hectic week for me doing that, but it's very rewarding, and I enjoyed it. Been doing it about 6 years now. 2 years where I've really been doing the bulk of the Cedar Rapids recruiting, and we actually hired the new coach this year is Marvin Jones, who might be familiar name to a lot of New York Jets fans. He's actually a first-round pick in one of my first drafts I ever watched. He's a college Hall of Famer from Florida State. So I'm looking forward to working with him this year. And that's kind of the gist of that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, you've had some amazing opportunities to connect with a lot of different people. We've talked about it on this show a couple times of just some of the players with the Broncos, even that you've been connected with over the years.
Yes,
with
sure.
Brandon Marshall was one I know that you have always had a good connection with.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think of some of your other ones.
There was Kayvon Webster I knew
Yep.
pretty well. Current team Zaire Anderson, I know him well. There's been we had a Bronco player, former Bronco player that was on Cedar Rapids, BJ Lowry, who did not make the team, but he was one of the final cuts 2 years ago. Very good guy. And then I've known Eric Decker from the past, Parrish Cox. I'm a big DB guy, so you'll see a little theme of me knowing quite a bit of DBs with the Broncos. So Darcel McBath was another guy that I knew pretty well. So.
Well, there you go. If you need to talk to anybody about a defensive back for the Broncos or anybody really, this is the guy to connect with. And on that note, I want to let you guys know that the Huddle Up 2018 draft show is all focused on all things pertain to your Denver Broncos as it pertains to the NFL draft. With Scott and myself being draftaholics, we'll be bringing you fresh insight today and analysis each and every. And sorry, let me start this over again. And on that note, I want to let all of our listeners know that the Huddle Up 2018 Draft podcast is focused towards all things pertain to your Denver Broncos and, of course, the upcoming NFL draft. With Scott and myself being draftaholics, we'll be bringing you today a fresh insight and analysis on every single player that we're going to talk about. We're going to give scouting reports, player values, scheme fits, personnel fits, and we're just maybe going to go through a little bit of general off-season banter today. You can follow myself on Twitter at Carl Demler MHH, as well as follow Scott at BlitzingDog3. Interesting name.
Yes, it comes from my old football roots back in high school. So
well, there you go.
You can
be sure to tweet us any questions or opinions you have because we live for talking Bronco football. You can also follow the podcast Twitter account at HuddleUpPod. And make sure you check out ours and our co-writers' written content at milehighhuddle.com, a part of scout.com and an affiliate of the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football, draft, and Bronco crazy as we are. So please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes as well as Stitcher. And don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without you listeners. So as a call to action, please go take the time and go to iTunes or Spreaker to rate and subscribe to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy the show. Well, Scott, before we get into all the draft and offseason conversations here, I thought we might as well talk. We just witnessed maybe one of the better Super Bowls I've ever watched. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a very much back and forth game. I mean, a lot of action, not a lot of defense. And I mean, I thought personally that besides our Broncos winning the Super Bowl, which is always going to be the best Super Bowl to us, I thought this might be the best, most entertaining Super Bowl of my time, at least.
Yeah, it's hard to. I guess last year going into overtime, but that one was just watching that second half. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Carl, but I was going to say, that one was a little different to me because you saw a team. You saw the Patriots come back, obviously, but you kind of saw a good half of football, and then another team play a poor half of football, and vice versa when the teams switched. And this one had that little different feeling to it, where both teams played so well, in the Super Bowl. At least on the offensive side of the ball, there were some defensive concerns there, but
yeah, it was one of my favorites to watch, and just had lots and lots of storylines going into it. And I just love the underdog always coming out on top, especially over the evil empire of the Patriots, seeing them go down. And did you just see the recent information just came out about 10 minutes before we started this podcast that Josh McDaniels is no longer going to the Colts?
I did see that.
That just fits well with their evil empire.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if that's the way it was planned all along, right?
I just keep thinking Josh McDaniels came to the Broncos to try to destroy them, because
you know what?
Belichick was so frustrated of getting beat by the Broncos all the time.
Yep.
And now to go destroy the Colts, who have been also one of their other big rivals. And I don't know. I guess it shouldn't shock me with the Patriots.
Yep. And I'm just kind of sitting here wondering, like, what's Josh McDaniels, what's he looking for? Because, he was pretty young when he took the Denver job over. He became the offense coordinator again, went and did that gig again with the Patriots, has a good role there. But, he's been out of the game for a while as a head coach, and you would think the timing would be kind of right for him now. And I don't know if there's something, internally where, maybe he's waiting for that Patriots job. Maybe Belichick's, kind of coming to an end there. It really makes you wonder, though, what's kind of going on there, why he hasn't been taking a head coaching job in recent years.
I would agree. I'm sure something was said to him, something was promised to him of, hey, this job's going to open up in the next year or two. We really want you to be the guy. I heard that he got a sizable raise to stay with the Patriots, so I'm sure that helped a little bit. But I just part of me sits here and goes, I don't think the Patriots job's going to be that great here in a couple of years. Once Belichick's gone, once Brady's gone. I mean, those have been the two pillars that have done what they've done. Everything else has changed over time, but those two. And go ahead.
As I said, I definitely agree. I think you kind of hit the nail in the coffin there with once, this era is done. I mean, if you land that, franchise quarterback, anybody can quickly turn that, franchise back around or whatever. But, with Garoppolo, getting traded this year, I also think you committed to Brady. I mean, I would think for a couple more years here, but I'm just a little confused at the future of the Patriots right now. What's going to happen when Brady and Belichick are gone? Who's going to be there after them? I would think, a Colts job, with Andrew Luck. Now we're not 100% sure on his health, but it's got to be appealing to Josh McDaniels, with Andrew Luck there. And, I don't, the Patriots don't have, that Garoppolo as a backup quarterback now to really lean on when Brady's gone. So I'm with you on the, in terms of New England, it may be a little difficult for them when Belichick and Brady are gone. I don't know exactly what's going to be there, for a head coach to work with.
Right. And at least right now, I mean, I know a year or two down the road, I'm a cap guy. I love looking at the cap, seeing what a team can do to build a roster. And we're going to get into that more with the Broncos here in just a second. But cap-wise, Patriots aren't really looking that great. But then again, they might be losing, like you said, Brady off the cap. Gronk is already starting to talk some retirement talk, which I don't think he will, but he has been beat up quite a bit throughout his career. So there's some things there that just make you go, that job could go from best to worst very quickly.
Yep. And it seems like the defense is really kind of dicey there. Every year they kind of plug some guys in that play well, but it's been kind of an up and down defense. They don't have a whole lot of, youth there that would make you think that, they can kind of turn into some kind of defensive team or some kind of fallback plan, and what Denver did when Peyton Manning kind of struggled a little bit. So definitely, not, I mean, it's New England and they got this little dynasty going, but if I'm a new coach, I'm not sure it's an extremely appealing job once Tom Brady's gone. So,
right. Yeah. And like you said, Andrew Luck, that sounds very, very appealing to me. Even if there is some questions about his injuries. It's kind of like Peyton when he hit the market. Everybody's kind of questioning whether his shoulder could hold up, but you're still sitting there saying, this is Peyton Manning. And Andrew Luck, he still has that fire in him. He's still, when healthy, that top 5, top 7 quarterback, and you can surround him with talent. You got a top 3 pick this year. There's just a lot of things there that show some decent promise.
Yes, absolutely agree. And I'm not sure, you're the cap guy. Do they have a lot of cap money going forward?
I think they did. I don't think they have a lot of big contracts because they just don't have any talent, hardly. Third most cap space, $77 million.
That's got to be appealing to me.
I would be. Like you said, Andrew Luck coming back, top 3 pick, $77 million. All very good things. But I guess McDaniels, he made his choice. He'll have to live with it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something inside there that made him, pull away from that job. So it really makes you wonder if something New England has told McDaniels is he's kind of going to wait off a year or so. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the Brady and Belichick era being over. So if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
I'm ready for it. It gets tiring every year, the Patriots being that top team, making the championship game. I would love to see some different teams get in. It was nice to see Jacksonville there since they can't remember the last time they were there.
Yeah, it's been forever.
Yeah, so it was nice to see them get into that spot. It was nice to see even Philly get their first Super Bowl, Minnesota making it there. It's just nice to see different teams. You get tired, and even I shouldn't say that because the Broncos have been one of those teams that have been very consistent. You've had the Broncos, the Steelers, the Patriots. Those have been the 3 teams in the AFC. So I guess I shouldn't be saying let's change it up because I'd love to see the Broncos back there, but it's just they've done it differently than the other 2 teams.
Yes, and I don't think the Eagles are going away anytime soon. I was happy to see them win it this year, but I think they're going to be a team that, sooner or later, they're going to be that team where fans like us may be getting a little tired of them winning too, with Carson Wentz there.
I like Carson Wentz, though. He's a likable guy. So
I agree.
I'm excited for them to see what they can do over the next few years. And I've been laughing all day because people have been slobbering all over Nick Foles. And I've even seen some people going, oh, I think they'll trade Carson Wentz now that Nick Foles is their Super Bowl MVP.
Yes, no. I've heard that. I've been at work when people are saying that, maybe you keep Foles and trade Wentz. I would say that's absolutely not even a debate for the Eagles organization right now.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. I mean, you got an MVP caliber quarterback. We're not talking just top 10. We're talking like top quarterback in the NFL possibly.
Yes.
You don't trade that away.
No, absolutely not. I mean, second-year player. I mean, he took, for just his second year. I mean, he looked good as a rookie, but he'd kind of, faded out a little bit his rookie year. And he put together a complete season this year. And you can definitely tell he's going to be that next big quarterback. When you think about it, you look at the elite quarterbacks in the league, and a lot of those guys are older now. Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Roethlisberger. So you're kind of looking for that next wave of young quarterbacks coming in the league to kind of take over the NFL as that face at the quarterback position. And I would say Carson Wentz is definitely looking to be that guy, along with, Andrew Luck if he stays healthy. So,
right, yeah, that's just it. I think you're just seeing that retirement of a lot of these top quarterbacks, these guys that have been the top 5 for the last 10, 15 years. And there's just that next wave. And so there's a void that's there. There's a chance for some teams to really take over and be that next group. And so on that note, let's look at maybe how the Broncos can become that type of team. And so this is my ideal offseason. And I just wanted to kind of get some of your thoughts on what you think of these players and thoughts on cuts, players in free agency, all that kind of stuff. And just see if you maybe kind of agree or disagree. That's fine to disagree, because that's going to be a big part of this. Everybody's going to disagree. We just did a series on the Mile High Huddle of the 4 quarterbacks that we kind of think the Broncos are most likely targeting. And you have obviously Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and Kirk Cousins. And each of us kind of presented the case for all 4 of them. And all 4 of us actually agree with the one that we were supporting. None of us agree on who's the top guy for the Broncos to go after. And so it's just one of those crazy off seasons. There's so many directions the Broncos could go and call it their ideal off season. But I thought we'd start here with looking at, you always have to start with the cuts and the trades. And I'm going to say I want to try to trade these players obviously first, but if I can't get them traded, these are players that I'm willing to cut. And so let me give a few names out there and just see what you think. Emmanuel Sanders.
Right. Yeah.
Do you agree with that one?
Yeah, I think Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, I have been a huge Emmanuel Sanders fan for years. He's a player that coming into his rookie season with Pittsburgh, I knew Emmanuel Sanders well, had him on a draft interview on a radio show. So I was ecstatic when we drafted him. But, I think it's probably to that point where, the receiver position has a lot of money involved. And to me, Emmanuel Sanders is probably the guy out there. So I would agree with you, Carl, on Emmanuel Sanders is probably not going to be a Bronco next year.
It's just hard when you have two wide receivers making pretty good money. That's a lot of money to put at a position that's very quarterback dependent. And when you don't have a quarterback, you just can't be paying those guys that kind of money. So, and they're both what, 30, 31 now?
Yep. They're at least reaching their 30s. Another thing I'll say about Emmanuel Sanders is I can remember when he first became a restricted free agent, he signed an offer sheet with the Patriots. He thought that was a dream to play with Tom Brady. The Steelers matched, and the next year he signed with us because it was a dream to play with Peyton Manning. So I think Emmanuel is really looking to play with a bona fide proven quarterback, and we may have that next year. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But I think deep down my gut tells me that Emmanuel Sanders it's kind of going to be a mutual thing here with his frustrations for the lack of the offense the last couple of years. I think he's a little bit impatient. So great player, but I think, it may be time for him to move on from Denver. So
Right. And it's hard. I kind of understand a little bit. You've gone from Ben Roethlisberger to Peyton Manning to now Trevor Siemian.
Yes.
It's a pretty big drop off.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I appreciate what he's done here. He has been one of the hardest workers from what I've seen, guy that's just always going 100 miles an hour and helped bring us a Super Bowl. So I can't say anything bad about the guy, but it is. I think it's just time to separate the two of us.
Yep. And I'll always remember him for being a clutch player. Hardly saw him drop a pass. I know when he came over from the Steelers and I was excited, Steeler fans always told me enjoy his drop passes, bouncing off his shoulder pads. And I didn't see him drop many passes here. I mean, everybody drops a few, but he was fairly consistent with his hands. And people got to remember he led our team, in receiving yards and catches during the Super Bowl. So he's had some huge, huge catches for us. I'll never forget the Chiefs game on Thursday night where Bradley Roby scooped up the fumble to win the game. Emmanuel Sanders was, he's the reason why we were ever in that game in the first place. And I will definitely cherish every moment I have with Emmanuel Sanders, and I will be rooting for him wherever he goes. But, I think the time's probably over in Denver.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's the next name, Menelik Watson. I think that's one of the most obvious cuts for the Broncos this year.
A no-brainer to me.
Yeah. So we can move on from that one. CJ Anderson.
Yeah. CJ Anderson, this is a tough one. I thought all year that this was probably his last year in Denver. I mean, he had 1,000-yard rushing season. There weren't many. I think what was there, 7, 8 guys
Something like
ran
that.
for 1,000 yards this year. But yeah, I mean, the Miami Dolphins, if you and I have talked about in the past, have always covered him with Adam Gase. We got we got Devontae Booker and D'Angelo Henderson after him. I think you and I both expect a running back to be drafted. But I'm going to say CJ Anderson's out. I'm going to agree with you. I think we're going to get something for him from, my best guess is Miami. But I think he's done as a Denver Bronco.
Yeah. Again, another guy. I loved his Super Bowl performance. He was the offense that day for as little offenses we had. So again, great memories with him, but it just cap price. He's what, $4.5 million, and there's no dead money if we cut him. And running back's just one of those positions you're just looking to get younger and cheaper.
Yep. And I think when we re-signed, when we matched the offer sheet the Dolphins gave to CJ Anderson, I think, looking at that contract, we kind of figured that CJ Anderson, it may be more of a 2-year contract for us with him, the way it was set up.
Right. And that's what I always have to laugh when people look at the total money of a contract and say, oh my gosh, how could you pay a guy that much? No, you got to look at the guaranteed money. You got to look at what's going to happen after 2 years, because usually that's 2-3 years is all you're really looking at a contract at, unless they're just outplaying their contract.
Exactly. And Denver, Miami, they offered him the contract, Denver matched, but it was set up pretty well where, those 2 years you get them, you're paying a little bit of that money, but at the same time, if you need to down the line with that contract, it's something that's going to be easy to give up. So, the way, I want to say, wasn't he paid like the 5th top running back?
I think you're right.
So
yeah, but I think those first 2 years were a lot lower than that.
Yep. So really the way the contract was set up was pretty good for our part of matching that offer for Miami. I remember when we offered him the contract, nobody thought we would match because of, as you were talking about, all the money involved. But when you look at, the way it's set up, 2 years is if he blows up in those 2 years, we keep him. He's an elite running back, then, we have him. But unfortunately with our cap issues, we can't afford CJ now. So.
Right. And this is a pretty good running back draft. So again, when you can get younger and cheaper, you just usually go that direction. It's the name of the game in the NFL. All right. Well, moving on, we have Trevor Siemian.
You know how I feel about Trevor Siemian, Carl. I think it's a little harder than I want it to be, though, because with the Brock Osweiler is a free agent. I thought Brock played probably the best of the 3 quarterbacks this year. But you got Paxton Lynch under contract. I think you got to keep Paxton, and you got to part ways with Siemian and Osweiler. I think you got to bring in, obviously we have Chad Kelly, who I like, and then depending on, if we sign Kirk Cousins, we really don't need to draft a quarterback. If we don't sign Kirk Cousins, we're probably going to go the vet route and draft a quarterback early. So I just don't think the room here is for Trevor. I think his days with Denver are over. He just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to bring in because essentially if you're keeping him, you're drafting a running back early. And if you draft a quarterback. I hope Nick can edit that, Carl. But if you draft a quarterback early, as I was saying, I think you got to go out and get a vet that can start, at least over the rookie quarterback, which means Trevor Siemian, you don't have room for him. And if you don't draft a quarterback early, you're going to go all in on Kirk Cousins. And if that's the case, you don't need Trevor Siemian. So in my mindset, Trevor Siemian's gone, Carl.
Yep. And plus he just got that nice little bonus that
Yes.
if the Broncos cut him, they save a little bit of money. I think $1.9 million. So there's actually some cap understanding for why the Broncos would cut him or trade
Yep.
him. I've heard that there are some teams actually interested because he's a guy with 20 starts.
Yes.
He's
And my
had
question
some
to you, Colin, is
decent moments.
what do you think you get for Simeon in a trade?
Uh, I would say fifth or later.
I agree with you. Yep.
You're
And
gonna there's value because he is a quarterback.
yep.
So
Yeah.
it's one of those, and he's not expensive. I mean, like I said, you're cutting him at 1.9 million, but in quarterback terms, that's still pretty cheap.
Yeah, I think you're definitely get some value out of him and some some team who's got a quarterback that may have a little uncertainty that needs someone to sit there and push him. Maybe a young quarterback, where he can come in and push the young quarterback. Anytime in the NFL, no matter how good you do, if you have starting experience, that's always a luxury at the very least as a backup, to fall back on. So Simeon, a lot of people are down on him. They think he's terrible, and I've never been a big Simeon fan. But if you're an NFL franchise, I mean, Trevor Simeon's really, a perfect backup quarterback type that can start if needed. He can be a stopgap quarterback for you because starting quarterbacks don't fall off the apple tree. And anytime you have a guy who's got starting experience, that's valuable to a team. So,
Yeah, I had a guy today pretty much say, well, the Broncos haven't had a quarterback workout yet under Elway, so we might as well give up on trying to draft a quarterback. And I'm
yes,
sitting there shaking my head going, no, you keep trying because you've got to get that position right.
right. It's the one position you can't give up on. That's for sure.
And it's one of those, it's honestly a little bit of, I mean, obviously you're doing your research to make sure you're trying to get the best information possible on a prospect and hope that this guy's going to work out. But it's kind of hit and miss of who works out, who doesn't work out.
Yep.
There's just, every team has failed with quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. Every team's failed. And the one defense to Elway is, we've never, if we go quarterback route at number 5, we've never had the ability to draft a quarterback that early, and we took Osweiler, took Paxton Lynch. When we took Paxton Lynch, I know you were very high on him, but it was also a time when, we had Mark Sanchez on our roster. So, I mean, we may not want to admit it, but we were pretty desperate to make something work, in terms of drafting a quarterback that year. So we kind of had to take what we had there. And if you're drafting one at 5, you're going to have, definitely I don't want to say that he's going to turn out because we've seen plenty of top 5 quarterbacks bust, but your chances, are going to be much better. With who you're working with, the tools you're working with. Paxton had great tools, but he had a lot of developing to go. You're going to get a guy that's, maybe a little bit more, developed coming into the NFL. So definitely can't give up on drafting a quarterback.
Right. That's the main point here. If you get that rookie quarterback, especially that first one where you get the 5th round option or fifth year option, sorry. Oh my goodness. You have a 5-year, 4-year window for the Super Bowl. Just like Philadelphia right now. That's what they've got because Carson Wentz is on that rookie contract and he's just out there just balling. So I wouldn't give up on that. But we better keep moving on here as we got a lot of offseason to go here. And so with all these cuts, trades, whatever you want to call them, I did leave off one guy that I know a lot of people have really pretty much said that is gone. Aqib Talib, I kept him.
I've been a big advocate for keeping Aqib Talib. I understand his contract, but I think it's hard to get rid of an all-pro cornerback. And Talib is still, some people think he slipped a little bit. Maybe he has a little bit, but when you have an all-pro quarterback like Talib, I just have a hard time getting rid of him. And I'm with you. I want to keep him around here. I think if we get a guy like, go ahead.
Oh, I think it's hard, and also I view that 2014 offseason where the Broncos were able to get Ware, Ward, and Talib. That changed everything for our defense. They brought this attitude, this fire to the defense that just wasn't there the year before. And
yes, exactly.
Ward and Ware are both gone. So it leaves Talib. He is that emotional leader on that defense. Now, yes, that can be a negative too, because when he negatively gets down, I think it does show up on the field. You see him have some decisions where I think he's trying to do too much on the field. I think he's trying to guess something and make a play that's not really there, and he gets caught out of position. Yep. But he's just that emotional guy that everybody else feeds off of. You can see the players respond when he gets in there and gets into a fight with some player because they did something wrong. I know some people say that's dirty and all those kind of things, but he loves his team. He loves his teammates, and that shows on the field. And so they amp up their game too.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people miss, when they talk about Aqib Talib, he's got some off-field issues. It's easy to find that as a distraction or claim he's a distraction. But I think what people miss on Aqib Talib is the fact that he is so well respected by his teammates. His teammates love him. Peyton Manning loved him when he was here. And when Harry Douglas took the cheap shot on Chris Harris's knee and Talib went after Harry Douglas, I mean, to me, I don't have a problem with that. I think that you need a player like that on your team. You need somebody, to a degree, to be able to, sometimes it's kind of like the enforcer in hockey. Now I didn't like, when he poked Dwayne Allen in the eye. You got some of those kind of issues. When he gave the hard face mask to Philly Brown for the Carolina Panthers, not a big fan of that, but there's certain things that you need kind of an enforcer in hockey, and your teammates respect it. Was not a big fan of when we got rid of TJ Ward right before the season. I mean, I somewhat understood it, but yet I didn't. I think that took a lot of fire out of the defense. And I think losing Talib, it's more than just a good player, getting rid of Talib. So I really hope Aqib Talib is here. And maybe if we do some stuff in free agency, maybe he'll take a little bit of a pay cut. And if not, I hope we find a way to keep him around here one more year.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm exactly there with you. That's why I left him in there. And I mean, I understand why he could be gone. Like you said, that cap savings of $11 million sounds pretty good, especially if you're going after a big spending guy like Kirk Cousins. But we'll get into a little bit more of maybe why I was a little bit more willing to hold on to him for my offseason here. But with all these cuts I just mentioned, it would save the Broncos about $16.5 million in cap. And after all the cuts, it would give them about $43.3 million to work with. And so now moving on to the next section of the offseason. This is, I know sometimes this can get a little dry, so we'll go through this a little bit quicker, but this is restricted free agency and exclusive rights free agency. So these are the guys like Matt Paradis and Shaq Barrett, where I'm putting a second-round tender on both those guys. And here's my big question to you. If somebody comes and gives them an offer sheet at that second-round tender, are you trying to match, or are you letting them go and getting that second-round pick?
That is a good question, Carl. That's a tough question to me. I think that let's start with Paradis first. I mean, you got me thinking here, Carl. I almost feel like I'm going to start with Barrett. Let's go to Barrett. I almost think with Barrett, if you get that second round pick, you got to take it. Barrett was a little older coming out. He applies a lot of pressure. I mean, I thought last year he was one of our more consistent pass rushers. I think he may be our most underrated player on our team. And I know a lot of people may disagree because pass rushers are hard to find and they're so important. But I think you take the second round pick with Barrett. How do you feel about Barrett and
I would take the second round tender. You're going to lose him the next year.
Yep.
You're already paying Von Miller so much money. You just can't pay Shaq Barrett that either. I feel like he is better being that rotational piece because
Agree.
he is that high energy. I want to go give everything on this play. And he just can't do that for 60, 70 plays a game. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
and
work.
that's a good point, and that that really solidifies your thought that for a guy who's not an every down player, I think you have to take the second round pick in that scenario. I mean, he did a lot for this team last year. I felt like when the pass rush was a little weaker this year than last year, Barrett kind of stepped up for them. There's some uncertainty at our pass rushing position right now. He didn't Shane Ray. I mean, we didn't get a whole lot out of him last year. Obviously the injury, he didn't look too good after the injury. But I mean, you can also, you use that second round pick. There's some pass rushers in this draft. I don't think that somebody will offer us a second round pick for Barrett. But I think you definitely got to take it. And with Paradis, I'm going to go ahead and take the second round pick on him too, Carl, just because he's had the hip injury. Great center. I feel like maybe his play has been a little bit down the last 2 years. So I'm going to take the second round pick on him as well. How about you?
I would too. I think he was a much better fit under Kubiak than he is with Joseph. I think there might be some team out there that really looks at him with that zone blocking scheme and says this guy is maybe that missing piece on the offensive line. At least I can hope so, because I just, like you, I don't feel like he had the best year last year. And I wonder a little bit that year before if it was maybe a little bit overrated just because he had zero talent around him. So those guys were getting beat so early that it made him look good. I know some people were sitting there looking at PFF and saying, oh, he's the number 1 rated center. No, I don't think he really was. You have to keep those grades in mind that they are subjective to the person that's watching. Yeah. And maybe I think there's a lot of times they don't always know what they're watching. There's a lot of things to like about PFF, Pro Football Focus, but there's some things that I think are very questionable. And Paris, he was good, but he wasn't that good. He wasn't the number 1 center in football. And so, if you get that second round tender, you take that and run.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll go through these guys real quick of the ERFAs. And Shelby Harris, Casey Creeder, Jordan Taylor, Zaire Anderson, Elijah Wilkinson. These are the guys that are really nice for those depth positions, that special teams, and they're on very, very cheap contracts, usually between about $460,000 to $615,000. So you get a bunch of players there for the back end of the roster, locked in for about $3 million total for all those guys. And especially like a guy like Shelby Harris, who just really came onto the scene, did great. Love it that he was a Raider and they let him go, and he comes to the Broncos and actually plays pretty well. And then you have your guy, Zaire Anderson. Have you talked to him lately about what this next year is going to look like?
I haven't spoke to him about the off season in general with his contract. I mean, I'm fully expecting him to be here. I don't think that, he has, just in talking to him, I don't think there's any plans that, he's going to part from Denver. I think, obviously going to be a big year for him in terms of getting a contract after this year. It's kind of like one of those players that you're deciding, can he start on another team, or is he more of that backup linebacker and special teams guy? And that's what'll be interesting when he does become an unrestricted free agent. Is there somebody willing to, give him a shot at a starting position? I'm Zaire Anderson. I fully expect back here. Going back to Shelby Harris, I think Shelby Harris is a bargain for us. The way he played this year, he had the huge preseason, and you always kind of wonder, is that just we see a lot of guys have big preseasons and don't do a lot in the regular season, and Shelby Harris definitely continued that play throughout the season. And I actually thought Shelby Harris got better and better as the season went on. So I mean, that exclusive rights free agent, that's a bargain contract if you ask me, and expect him to hopefully build off that and get a bigger contract the following year. And then Casey Kreider's been a no fault long snapper for us, very dependable. He's also an Iowa guy, so Nick and I are, big Casey Kreider fans. Um, and then I feel like Jordan Taylor does a lot for you. He to me, he's never going to be a star player, but he's always going to be a good role player, good teammate. He came in and returned punts for us this year when we had no punt returner. When Isaiah McKenzie was struggling, and then Elijah Wilkinson. I think the coaching staff's pretty high on Elijah Wilkinson. I hear Bill Musgrave likes him quite a bit. So I mean, we'll see what he does. I mean, as you know, we need somebody to step up at offensive tackle. So Wilkinson, I mean, I'm expecting a free agent in there, but he's also got a good opportunity this offseason to better himself, and maybe his name will come up in some kind of talk with a bigger role this year. So
yeah, I heard the same thing. There was a couple times I thought they were actually going to start him at right tackle because of just how much they were liking what he was doing in practice. And I even heard that he was one of the few guys that could actually contain Von Miller. Not every time, but compared to the other guys, he was actually doing decent against Von Miller. Yeah. So
anytime you can contain Von Miller, you got something good going for you.
Right, exactly. That's the standard. That's the top standard. That's what you're looking for there. But anyway, after all these guys, I would have the cap around $34.7 million. And then we get to the draft of how much that's going to cost. That's going to be about $11 million. Broncos have the second most expensive draft class in football this year, only behind the Browns. So that's a good thing in the fact that means they have a lot of picks in the top 3 rounds, the most expensive picks, obviously, but also just means that they have to make sure that they're setting aside enough money for the draft. And so this is something I always tell Bronco fans when we're looking at offseason. You have to realize just because somebody says at the beginning, oh, after these cuts, we have $47 or $43 million. Well, that doesn't mean the Broncos can go spend that entire $43 million in free agency. It's not that simple. They got a lot of other expenses that they got to worry about. And so after all this, the draft, the free agency, or not free agency, after cuts and everything else, this is what I have the Broncos at heading into free agency. $20 million. This is the safe zone that you have $20 million to spend. And I think people are going to hear that and be a little bit shocked going, oh, we don't have as much to spend as I thought.
Yes.
And that's maybe where the whole Aqib Talib being cut thing really comes into play, because you need a little bit more cap space. But I guess here's my next big question to you then, because we're talking about free agency. Where do you sit on the whole signing Kirk Cousins thing?
I'm definitely a Kirk Cousins fan, and I'm definitely expecting and hoping that Denver goes after him. I also want them to be smart about it. I don't want them, if they get in a bidding war, I don't really want to go over. I mean, it's hard to put a figure on Kirk Cousins. I mean, when you say we have $20 million to spend, I'm thinking Kirk Cousins, is going to be in that 25 range. Does that seem too high? But I hate to say if the price is right, go after him because he's a franchise quarterback. But I think you got to be careful with him. I want him here. I want an experienced, proven quarterback here. You don't see a quarterback like Kirk Cousins reach free agency often. So I think you got to take advantage of that. It's kind of when Peyton Manning became, available to us. It doesn't happen much. So, I mean, we're kind of lucky in the terms that, when Peyton Manning was available, we had the need at quarterback. I feel like that's the same thing with Kirk Cousins. So you got to explore that option, but I think you got to definitely be careful with it. I mean, bringing Kirk Cousins is going to attract, some possible bargain deals at the same time. But, you don't want to get caught up into a huge contract where you're struggling at the other positions. So to me, it kind of depends on how you evaluate the draft at the quarterback position as a franchise, how high you want to go with Cousins.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've said on here many times that I like Kirk Cousins. I'm not in love with Kirk Cousins, in the fact that I don't view him as that really top 5 quarterback that you can bring him in and you can have not the greatest talent around him and he just brings their game to a whole new level. I mean, Peyton Manning, he came to the Broncos when I know that they had gone 8-8 and won the division, but they weren't exactly a great team at that point. They were still missing some pieces, but Peyton Manning really helped to mask a lot of the issues that the team had. I look at the offensive line. Everybody kind of says, oh, the offensive line really fell off the last 2 years. Well, I think a big part of it is just the quarterback play. You got a quarterback that's holding on to the ball half second longer than what Peyton was.
Yep.
And that makes a huge difference on how well your offensive line looks. So there's things like that really play into it. And I'm kind of with you, and you just can't get into this bidding war. You're already paying Von Miller. You don't want to be paying a quarter of your cap just to 2 players. It becomes very, very difficult to build a championship caliber team. I look at the Philadelphia Eagles this last year. They are a great example. Their top quarterback goes down. Well, they can still go out and win because they have a great offensive line. They have a great defensive line. They have some playmakers that can go and do some things with the football on their own. You know, just get the ball into their hands, let them go do something. And a quarterback that did, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Nick Foles. He had a great playoffs. I commend the guy for what he did, especially in the Super Bowl. That was a gutsy performance to go out there and do some of the aggressive throws that he did and to beat the Patriots. That's just impressive. But anyway, they had more talent on the team than just Carson Wentz. If Kirk Cousins comes here, how much more talent can we really surround him with? And I just think that there's other teams that can offer him more, like the Browns, the Jets, even the Vikings. They can offer him a lot more, and they're looking for a quarterback if they don't take one of their 3 guys. And I think they have a little bit more talent than what the Broncos have, obviously, since they were a playoff caliber team. But I don't know. I'm one of those, about $25 million is my very top end. And even there, I'm kind of sitting there saying, Kirk, please take a little bit of a discount to help this team out to make sure that you can be surrounded by talent, because I think that's big for a quarterback. You want to have talent around you too.
Yep.
But I'm more leaning towards the draft. Honestly, that's more my direction if I'm looking at my ideal offseason, I would rather spend that money to surround a rookie quarterback with more talent. And so that brings us to free agency. And here's the guys that I'm kind of looking at. When I look at that $20 million, these are guys that I would love to spend this money on. And the first one, you and I kind of talked about just a little bit earlier today, and Trey Burton, the Eagles tight end. He was their backup tight end, but he was a big-time playmaker. If you noticed in the Super Bowl, he actually had a touchdown pass as a tight end. He was the one that threw the pass to Nick Foles. And he is a very, very athletic piece. Something the Broncos haven't had at tight end since Julius Thomas left. That guy that can destroy the seam and make teams have to respect the middle of the field.
Yeah. And, Trey Burton, I think, you think about the Eagles tight end situation, you got Zach Ertz, you got Brent Selleck. He's a little bit lost in the shuffle there, but they do have a role for him. Athletically gifted, great weapon, gets open well. He actually played quarterback his freshman year at Florida, was recruited as a quarterback. Many may remember him. He had his freshman year against Kentucky. He had 6 rushing touchdowns, tying a record. And then he kind of moved around from fullback, tight end, kind of like an H-back role with Florida, got some snaps at quarterback. So he's still kind of learning that tight end position when he came to the Eagles as an undrafted free agent. And I think he's now kind of taking off with it, but he needs, a little bit more of a role than he has on Philadelphia to really take off of that with his talent level at that position. So I think Trey Burton is a guy that would be a great fit for this team. We've had very little tight end production. I feel like some games we had 1 catch out of our tight end. We've had tight ends on and off the practice squad. It's a decent tight end draft, But I think it's a position that I really want to focus on in free agency if we can. If we can get a guy like Trey Burton at a decent price to me, and I think Trey Burton would be a great opportunity for him, great situation for him, and to me he makes a lot of sense as a Denver Bronco.
Yeah, no, I'm like I said, that's one of my top guys for the Broncos to target. You got to get some more weapons. You just saw it with the Eagles, where they just had weapon after weapon on the field, and somebody was getting open in a hurry. And it's just a matter of, did the quarterback find them in time? And right now, the Broncos are very, very void of playmakers. Now, I don't think DT is washed up as much as some people are out there saying. I think he's still out there. I think he's still a playmaker for the Broncos. Maybe not what he was 5 years ago, but he's still a playmaker. I think Carlos Henderson, if he's healthy and has the offense down, he was an absolute freak in college.
Yep.
He was amazing. I loved that pick. He wasn't a great fit with McCoy and that complicated offense, but maybe with Musgraves, a little bit more simpler of an offense, you can really take advantage of his athleticism. So then you add a guy like Trey Burton. That's 3 weapons that you've now got on the offense that can possibly go make some big plays for you.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Trey Burton is just his versatility. You don't see many tight ends with the athletic ability that Trey Burton has. I have this hunch that Trey Burton is wherever he ends up. Hopefully, it's our Broncos. We'd both love that. I just have a feeling that he's going to be that next. I don't want to say big tight end, in terms of putting the expectations on him, but he actually reminds me a little bit of Jordan Reed of the Redskins. Jordan Reed actually came to the Florida Gators as a quarterback as well, so it took him a little bit to learn that tight end position. And athletically, you find a lot of tight ends that are pretty raw coming out. Takes them, a little bit to get their game down. But he's got that perfect tight end frame, and the athletic ability is just out of the roof with Trey Burton.
Right. So quick challenge for you. What other position other than fullback, tight end, running back has Trey Burton played in the NFL?
Other than that's a good question. You said tight end, running back, quarterback, wide receiver. Those ones you listed.
Yeah, fullback too.
Fullback too.
Yep.
Man, I don't think he played on the defensive side of the ball, has he?
No, he took a snap as a long snapper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would have never guessed that. I knew it wasn't on the offensive line, so the only thing I could think of was defense.
Yeah. No, their long snapper got injured in the game, and they were down 21-19 to the Washington Redskins. And the coach was having to decide whether they could even try a field goal because they didn't have a long snapper. And so Trey Burton went on the sideline, practiced long snapping real quick, and they felt comfortable enough to send him out there, and he snapped the game-winning field goal snap. It wasn't
Very
pretty.
nice.
It was actually a high snap, but it worked. It was good enough.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So he's one of those guys. He just does whatever you need him to do.
It's kind of like Ocho Cinco kicking the extra point for the Bengals.
There you go. All right, but here's my next guy, and this could maybe be the big signing. And I know a lot of people are going to be after this guy, Andrew Norwell, the guard from Carolina. Most people believe he's a top 5 guard in the NFL, and I know some people are going to sit here and say you can't pay 2 guards top money. But this kind of goes into, I think the offensive line, especially offensive tackle group in the draft is deep. And so maybe I go find my right tackle in the draft. And so then really your guys that are being paid are your left guard, right guard, and the rest of the guys are on pretty cheap contracts. And so it's not a whole lot. It's not huge money being at the offensive line. It's just a matter of it's mostly geared towards the guard position. And again, this is a guy that's a great run blocker. He's a great pass blocker. And if I'm getting a rookie quarterback, I'm wanting to make sure that offensive line is very, very secured. So he's a guy that I'd go after. I think he's probably going to price himself out of Denver, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. probably going to be a little bit out of our price range. Now, if we don't get, somebody like Cousins, we may have a little bit better option at Norwell. But I like the comment you mentioned about the tackle position. You look at the free agency, and I haven't probably studied, who's out there in free agency at the tackle position as well as you, but I feel like there's not a whole lot available out there right now.
You got Nate Soldier, and that's about it.
That's about it, yeah. So I mean, I think that being said, and you're looking for a right tackle, you're looking for another guard. Max Garcia really has struggled, kind of up and down. You got to solidify that offensive line. So I think Norwell is definitely a guy that you got to be careful what you pay him. If it gets too high, you got to you definitely can't get into bidding war with him either. But if the price is right, Norwell makes a lot of sense for Denver, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple other guards I really like. Josh Klein is one from Tennessee. He's a very good pass blocker. And Justin Pugh, he's another one that I wouldn't mind. I'm trying to remember the guy from the Colts.
Not ringing a bell, Carl.
Oh boy, hold on, let me find this. Nick, you can edit this out.
But Justin Pugh, that's an interesting name you brought up. It makes me feel kind of old thinking him as already a free agent. I want to say, didn't he start off in the league as a tackle?
He did, and then he moved to guard, and then this last year, because of injuries, they ended up having to move him back to tackle.
Yeah,
and he did struggle some, but at least he has that versatility if you absolutely need him to.
Yeah, which could be huge for us. I mean, we had to stick Alan Barbary at right tackle last year. That was a disaster. I'd rather keep Pugh at guard, but I mean, if you had to stick him at tackle, it's something that a little bit of a stopgap there that you can depend on him. We did a lot of shuffling last year, so if we can get some versatility on the offensive line, definitely don't object to that.
Yeah, the guy I was thinking from the Colts was Jack Buhort. He's been injured a lot, but maybe for that really, if you miss out on all the other guys, that cheap option that could maybe really pan out well. I know Bronco fans might be sitting here saying we just had that with Malik Watson, and it did not work out well. So I could see some reasons for not going after him, but he's kind of my option D or E.
He's kind of a fallback. Yeah, a little bit of a fallback option, and I don't think we'd have to pay him a whole lot. I mean, it depends. I mean, I mean, what would you expect a guy like him to get in free agency?
Maybe $2.5 million tops.
Yeah. So it's going to be a little cheap. To me, it's kind of a little bit of a fallback, option that if as long as you don't overpay him, I don't have a problem with signing a guy like that. Especially if it's on a shorter contract. Sometimes those are the chances you have to take sometimes in the NFL. It didn't work with Watson, obviously. But Josh Klein, the other guy you mentioned, that's really the guy that I like to see us go after. Just I know you have him down here, possibility of a 2-year, $8 million deal.
Yeah.
Which I think would be a pretty fair deal for us, and that's really the guy, Josh Klein, that I like to see us go after. And of course, Norwell would be great, but if the money gets too high, then I'm kind of not expecting him. But I'm Josh Klein's a guy that I think would be a great fit for Denver. Great pass blocker. You bring in a guy like Cousins, or you bring in a young quarterback, and we're gonna need a guy like that. Garcia. I love him as a backup, but he's had 2 years as a starter now, and he just consistently can't get it done. And we just need to do a little better there.
And that's one of my bigger disappointments, because his rookie year showed such promise.
Yep.
I don't know what happened to him after that, but just like he lost all confidence.
Yeah, I thought Garcia was a steal for us. I mean, strong guy, played center at Florida. He had transferred from Maryland to Florida. Agents, scouts talked great about him, work ethic, his personality, character. But I think you just, you've got to fill that positions this year. You've seen a lot of Garcia. I think ideally he would be a terrific guy to have as a reserve guy. So I think you've got to focus on the guard spot in free agency, though. There's, if you want to take a guy like Hernandez in the draft, I'm very high on him, but picking at 5, he's not going to be there in the second. If you take a quarterback at 5, you've got to fill the offensive line, at least one of those offensive line positions in the free agency period.
Right. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And like I said, if I'm not spending big on Cousins, then I want to spend big on the offensive line, winning those trenches. And talking about trenches, this is another guy that I thought would be a nice, cheap option just to add some depth to the team, and that is Aaron Lynch, especially if you lose Shaq Barrett. He's had some disciplinary issues, some off-field stuff going on. I thought maybe Von Miller would be a really good influence on this guy because he had some promise early in his career that he's just let other things distract him from football. And so, again, this is kind of a cheap 1-year prove-it kind of contract, maybe just to replace Shaq Barrett if he gets picked up by somebody, because I do think he has good value. If second-round pick for Shaq Barrett, a starting pass rushing option that's actually pretty good, that's a pretty good deal. And I think maybe especially somebody at the end of the second round, maybe, I hate to say this, but the Patriots, they need a pass rush.
Yep.
I could see them really going hard after that. But no, I just thought maybe Aaron Lynch would be a guy that would fit in well.
Yeah, I think Aaron Lynch will, and he won't be too pricey. I think he'll be productive here. Like you said, you have Von Miller here. I think he's a guy that you put the right pieces around him, and you allow him, to do his strengths, which is rush the passer. I think he could be of great value in Denver.
All right, my final guy here. This is my backup quarterback, Josh McCown. Just had a really good season with the Jets until he broke his hand. Wasn't it against the Broncos?
Yes, it was against the Broncos.
Yeah, but I mean, that should be healed up. He's one of those quarterbacks that I think if a coach had ever really fully committed to him, would have been very happy to have done so. I think he's been underappreciated in the NFL. I'm not saying that he's a top 10 quarterback, but I think he's in that next tier of guys, or can be. And he's athletic. He's more athletic than people have ever given him credit for. And I just think he'd be a good guy. I think he knows his role in the NFL nowadays. He is more that either stopgap quarterback or that backup that really helps the rookie out.
Yep. And I think that's the thing with McCown is, he's been around several different teams, but he's very dependable. He's kind of the guy you bring in, to like you said, he mentors a rookie. A rookie takes over for him when they're ready to go. And he's definitely a good stopgap type of quarterback. Doesn't turn the ball over. Good leadership skills. Good teammate. And I think he played extremely well for the Jets this year. I expected the Jets to pick number 1. I'm not going to lie. I feel like they did a lot with not a whole lot of talent there, and I give a lot of credit, obviously, to the coaching staff, but Josh McCown as well.
Right. I mean, that's part of it too. Is he's been on terrible teams. He's been with the Browns, and he actually had them winning. He's been on the Jets, like you said. I was with you. I didn't have him win a single game this year. Yeah, I thought they were one of the worst rosters I've ever seen in the NFL, and yet they go out and win 5 games.
Yes, and really, Josh McCown getting hurt. They up until that. I hesitate to say they were playing good, but they were playing better than we expected. And up till that Denver game where McCown, broke his hand, and then Bryce Petty came, and I don't think they won a game after that. But that's kind of where they became to the point where they weren't too competitive anymore. They competed with the Patriots. They were up 14-0 on the Patriots this year. Josh McCown was in there. He didn't have a whole lot of wide receivers to work with this year. Probably one of the worst wide receiver cores. But he had Robbie Anderson stepped up for him. He really helped some of those young receivers. And I just think Josh McCown, I'm not looking at them signing McCown just because I'm looking at either you're going Cousins or you're spending a little bit more money on a veteran on a 2-year deal with a rookie maybe. I feel like it's a pretty good. There's good options if you don't go with Kirk Cousins, and you got McCown in here. I think that's definitely a fallback option if you got to go that route. And that's why I think you don't have to go after Cousins if you don't have the money, because it's not it's not a desperation thing here, because we got 3 Vikings quarterbacks free agents. You've got McCown as a fallback. Obviously Alex Smith is no longer available. But you do have options on there. If you want to go with a 1-year quarterback because you're drafting a guy at number 5, Josh McCown is a good fit for you,
Right.
Tyrod Taylor's another guy to look at. I don't know what it's going to cost, but that's another option.
Right. Yeah. No, and I thought about those guys. I thought price-wise, they're obviously going to be a little bit more expensive than McCown. So I went with the cheaper option, which – probably not the way you want to go at the quarterback position. Broncos have done that plenty, and it hasn't really done well for them.
It may
but I guess go ahead.
That's to say, it may keep Talib around.
That's true, right? And so I guess I'm going a little bit more all in on the rookie quarterback really panning out and just being able to surround him with more talent. Maybe this means you can actually go get Andrew Norwell. That you can go get that top guard instead of having to get that second, third, fourth kind of guy. But I don't know. That's just kind of where I was going, just trying to be cap savvy here. But maybe I got a little too penny pincher on the quarterback position once again. But then that brings us here now to our draft. And I only went to the 5th round just because then you get to some names that probably most people haven't even heard of. Maybe even after the 3rd round, most of these names haven't been heard of. But I'm going to start here with 5th overall pick. Obviously, I have put myself in a position where I have to go quarterback. And in this scenario, obviously, Browns and Giants both need quarterback. I've been told that they're going to go Darnold to the Browns, Rosen to the Giants. Those teams both love those quarterbacks. Just seems the way they're going to go. When I was at the Senior Bowl, every person I talked to, this is what they said. So I think where there's smoke, there's fire. Probably going to be the way it goes. So then that leaves the 3rd quarterback in the draft for the Broncos, and I went with Baker Mayfield. And I know you and I've kind of talked about him a little bit, and you're kind of a little bit iffy on Mayfield, right?
Yeah, I'm a little iffy on Mayfield. I mean, you had a chance to see him at the Senior Bowl, a little more up close and personal. I really question his down the field decision making, in that. I hate to hate on a player's size, but his height, just the size of him bothers me for some reason at the quarterback position. I hate when people compare him to Johnny Manziel, though, and then I don't like when people compare him to Drew Brees, because to me he falls in the middle, and that's a huge gap between the two, obviously.
Right, right. You're talking about a Hall of Fame quarterback and a guy is he playing in the Canadian League right now?
I don't even think he's there yet.
Okay. So
maybe look at the XFL.
there you go. Yeah. It's just, and the whole disciplinary thing, it's very different.
Yeah. Yes.
Manziel, he had time after time of something that he was doing. I mean, teams were warned from the very beginning. Coaches told them, this guy loves to party. Baker Mayfield got caught once, got drunk, made some stupid decisions that one night, and he's corrected it. He hasn't had any other issues. I've been told he's had roommates that have come up to him and said, hey, we're going to a big party. And he said, no, I'll just stay here and study or play Madden, which I guess that could be giving some Broncos some PTSD with Paxton Lynch and the stories of that he loves to play Madden more than he does regular football. But I think that's still a better choice. He's making a choice that he's not going to go out there and use his fame and go to parties. I went to Manhattan Christian College. Most of you listeners know that, which is right across the street from K-State. And I had Josh Freeman was at college when I was there. And the stories I would hear about that guy and the partying and the women and everything else that he was doing. And it got pretty crazy. And I met the guy, and he wasn't a great guy. I've met Mayfield. Mayfield's a really good guy. I got a chance to talk to him there at the Senior Bowl. He was a guy that I just saw this story today. I didn't get to see this when I was there, but he stayed after when they had the fan day, I guess is what I don't know what they really call it, but the day that the players get to interact with the fans get to show up to a building and the players are all there. They sign autographs, take pictures, all that kind of stuff. Baker Mayfield was the last guy to leave. He wanted to make sure everybody that wanted a picture with him or an autograph, that they got one. So again, he's a different guy than Manziel. And I did like him there. He changed my mind at the Senior Bowl. I was very impressed with his accuracy, with his decision-making. He made the quickest decisions. He had a very good velocity on his football. He had the athleticism to go make some plays. The other big thing, I know listeners have probably gotten tired of me just drooling over this kid, but just his leadership. It is so easy to see why people just gravitate to him. There's a lot of leadership stories out there, and just to see it live with brand new players that most of he's never played with, never met, and he steps on the field, and every one of them just like gravitated right to where he was. They didn't do that with Josh Allen. They didn't do that with any of the other quarterbacks. But Baker Mayfield, every player wanted to be near him. So just something that really stuck out to me. And like I said, at this point, you're kind of stuck. I hate to say that, but at the same time, I'm happy because I like all three of the top quarterbacks in this draft. I like Mayfield. I like Baker. I like Mayfield. I like Rosen. And I like Darnold. I could be happy with any of the three being the starting quarterback for the Broncos.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you bring up an interesting point there with the leadership skills of Baker Mayfield, because I think that a lot of people underestimate the importance of leadership at the quarterback position. I mean, we saw it with Peyton Manning. When Peyton Manning, was not the normal Peyton Manning, he still had those unbelievable leadership skills that, quite frankly, I don't think we win the Super Bowl without a leadership skills like, a Peyton Manning that year. I mean, I got my concerns with Baker Mayfield, but at the same time, I think a lot of people that are down on him, they think it's immaturity. But we have to remember too, we were all in college and did dumb things. I mean, these are still kids, becoming men, still learning through mistakes. Unfortunately for guys like Johnny Manziel, when you repeat it over and over and over, it's when you learn from them and grow from them. And, I don't think I'm as concerned about Baker Mayfield off the field as some people are. I think that I'm just very nervous in getting this pick right. Anytime you pick number 5, especially if you go quarterback, and he does not have, he doesn't have the ideal size that I look for, but at the same time, neither does Drew Brees. So part of me thinks, if he can be closer to that, aspect of Drew Brees than, a busted, shorter quarterback, then, obviously I'd be all for it. But I hesitate with Baker Mayfield, but I do like what you have learned about him and what you've witnessed with him. And, the stuff you've shared with me makes me feel better. I will say that I was very anti-Baker Mayfield. And then after the the Senior Bowl, I've warmed up to him a little bit. He's still got a ways to go, Carl, but Baker Mayfield, I'm warming up to him. So we'll see a couple of months. A lot can change. So the guy I really like is Josh Rosen. You've heard the attitude issues, but the tools are exceptional there. I like Josh Allen's tools, but I just think at number 5, you got to get it right. You busted on Paxton Lynch, who had similar tools. I don't think you can afford to get this pick wrong. So if you go quarterback, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I would be happy with any of the 3 to a certain extent. I wouldn't be unhappy with Baker Mayfield, but right now he's not the guy that would have me jumping out of my seat, throwing the bag of Cheetos in the air. But I'm warming up to him. So
okay, all right, yeah, I went into the Senior Bowl as a fan, but not a fan. I liked some parts of his game, but there was still a lot of questions.
Yeah,
and that was the thing that I guess impressed me the most was in a few short days, he was able to answer most of those questions.
Very good.
But that takes me to my second round pick here, and this is where I fix the offensive tackle position, and I go with a guy named Jamarco Jones of Ohio State. And I think this is a guy, he hasn't been getting the praise that a lot of the other tackles have been getting. You got your Williams from Texas that a lot of people have been pretty high on. You got Orlando Brown. I think you're pretty high on him, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm very high on Orlando Brown. I think he's been a little under the radar for a lot of these draft websites. But
yeah, I just don't think he'll be there in the second round pick. He's going with you. Top 20 probably.
I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if Orlando Brown is there, to be honest. I know some people have him lower, but I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Right. No, if he was available, he would be my second round pick, but I don't have him available. I'm trying to keep this as realistic as I can, at least at this time. As we get closer to draft, obviously we know things change, but Jamarco Jones, I just think he's a very consistent guy. He's got some power to his game. He's got some aggressiveness, and he just doesn't panic. That was the big thing that really stuck out to me. I think you saw this last year with Menelik Watson. You see with Ty Simbrello when he was here. You saw with Stevenson when he was in. Those guys panic when they get against some of the top tier pass rushers. Even against the lower tier guys, they still panic. And Jamarco Jones, he's so fluid. He just doesn't take those bad steps. He doesn't lunge at a guy very often. He just stays in his position, and he just trusts that he knows what he's doing. And so I feel like he'd be such a good fit for the Broncos. He'd be a great fit for the power blocking scheme. And I think he could just come in and just be very seamless. And honestly, part of me would think about putting him at the left tackle spot and moving Bowles over to the right tackle spot. I just think he has the better consistent feet for that left tackle spot that you usually really like. But honestly, I could be okay with either of them at either side.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think this would be a great value pick. I think Jones is very well developed, but I don't even think we've seen his best football yet. He's got a lot of upside. I like the way he moves his feet too. I mean, he doesn't make many mistakes. And I think down the line, I agree with you. I think you could very well see him at the left tackle spot and Bowles at the right tackle spot. I mean, he's that kind of an offensive lineman. I mean, worst case scenario is he's a really good right tackle for you. But he's got that potential to be that left tackle, that we had with, Clady for, however many years, 10 years or so. I think he'd really solidify our offensive line, and he's a guy that would come in right away and play. So it'd be a huge value.
There's no development. There's some other offensive tackles in this draft that are a little bit more of a development project, and I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a day one starter, and I feel like he's one of the more clean guys that you just know can trust that he's going to get there day one.
Yes, I absolutely love this pick in round 2. If this is the way we went, I'd be very happy.
All right, well, let's go to pick 3 or round 3 here. We got 2 picks, most likely. And my first pick that I went with was a wide receiver named DJ Moore of Maryland. And this is, again, where – and I wanted to save this thought because I wanted to wait. I didn't want to give away who I was going to have as my quarterback. But if I have Mayfield, this is what I'm wanting. I'm wanting guys with lots of quickness, speed, what he has there at Oklahoma. That was one thing at the Senior Bowl. You could tell he was very frustrated having a lot of possession-type receivers because they just can get open in a hurry. He'd sit there and just wait and just go, come on, get off your block, get off your do something. And they just wouldn't be able to do it. And so he'd fit it into a really tight hole or a tight window, but it just, you could tell he's used to a little bit more athleticism than what was there at the Senior Bowl. And so you get a guy like DJ Moore, you got Carlos Henderson, you got Demaryius Thomas, you got Trey Burton, you got our running backs, whoever they might be for this next year. D'Angelo Henderson has a lot of wiggle to his game. Booker, great receiving option as well. So I just feel like all of a sudden you go from one of the least weapony teams, I guess I don't know if that's, you can really say it that way, but just there's not a lot of weapons here in Denver. You go from that to all of a sudden Broncos look like they have a lot of different kind of options for a quarterback to throw to. And so teams all of a sudden have to defend the entire field with this kind of move.
Yeah. And DJ Moore, I'll tell you this. I love the guy. I mean, he is one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft. I love James Washington. who obviously won't be here at this point. But I think you put DJ Moore on most other college teams, and there's no way he lasts until this pick. At Maryland, he dealt with a couple of dual threat quarterbacks, but this guy was scoring on reverses. He was taking short passes and turning them into long gains. He was taking kick and punt returns to the house. Definitely a guy who, when he declared for the draft, was ready to go. I think I hesitate to say it, but I think he has star potential at the next level. I think with the tools he has, with the speed he has, what he can do after the catch, this guy is going to be a steal wherever he goes. If he goes outside, I'm expecting him, to go about this spot. But again, another great value pick here, at round 3 with DJ Moore. This guy, every time you put the film on, every time I watch a Maryland game, him and Tyler Johnson, a running back that they have, are making big plays, and Moore's doing it on a consistent basis. I probably like him. I like Carlos Henderson like you do, but I probably like DJ Moore even better than Carlos Henderson from last year's draft.
I actually might be with you there, which is crazy to say because of how much I loved Carlos Henderson. Couldn't believe we got him in the 3rd round, and I would be the same way with DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore brings a little bit more to the table. Yeah. I think he has a little bit better hands. I think he's got a little bit more wiggle to his game. And he's such a tough weapon to defend. And I think, like you said, with Mayfield, he would be such a perfect fit because they ran a lot of the same stuff that he would see at Oklahoma. A lot of the same routes where you're asking him to do those quick slant routes, those comeback routes, the hitch and go routes. Those are the type of things that Mayfield is used to. And so I feel like DJ Moore would just be that seamless player that they would have an instant connection.
Yeah, and what he does with the, after the catch is what really impresses me with DJ. I mean, he turns, short yardage into big gains. And I talked about this with you a little bit. We haven't had a lot of players in Denver who have made, difference maker playmakers on this offensive unit. I mean, we've really been lacking that. We all liked Alvin Kamara last year. We passed up on him. I know that's a different position, but DJ is definitely in the same aspect of his game where he's going to be a difference maker. I mean, he can score every time he touches the ball, and this is the kind of guy I want on Denver that we've lacked for years. So, this is definitely one that I will jump out of the seat and throw the cheese balls off the couch for, Carl.
I'll be doing the same, man. I'll be doing the same.
I did it for Devontae Booker. So.
I know. Yeah, that was your boy. I remember feeling so happy for you when the Broncos took him. Yeah. And just wish he could stay healthy. I feel like that's been a big part of it for him is he just hasn't had quite the reps in the offseason when they're going through training camp to really get into a rhythm of, hey, this is what I need to do. And then just rookie year, going from that backup role to starter. As a backup, he was just dominating for the Broncos. He was averaging over 5-6 yards a carry. And all of a sudden he got put into that starter role and just those extra carries on that knee that just wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
Just really, really hurt him in his development. So I don't know, maybe this is the year he really burst onto the scene. I really hope so because there is a lot of talent there in that kid.
No doubt about it.
All right, well, my next 3rd round pick here is Oren Burks, a linebacker from Vanderbilt, the guy that played next to what was the kid from last year?
Zach Cunningham.
Yep. And this is kind of more that hybrid linebacker safety guy. This is Vanderbilt kind of moved him all over the place. He's a bit undersized, and I'm kind of thinking maybe this isn't the way the Broncos should go because they're going to be losing Todd Davis most likely during the offseason. But at the same time, watching Todd Davis try to go into coverage, it just made me want to poke my eyes out because it was not pretty. Teams just picked on him left and right. And so getting that guy with Brandon Marshall, that both of them can actually drop into coverage and do some things. And this guy, he's got some quickness to him. I recommend anybody go back and watch the Senior Bowl. This kid, he was a late addition. And during the Senior Bowl, though, he just dominated. He was making great angles. Offensive lineman couldn't catch up to him. I think he could do okay in the run game. He won't be great, but I think he can be okay, and he can be that coverage linebacker that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and the other thing about Burks is you mentioned this a little bit, but he was recruited as a linebacker. He moved to safety, and then he moved back to linebacker. He added some weight, went back to linebacker. I believe he was third team All SEC as well, which there's a lot of good linebackers in the SEC. To even make third team is a pretty good accomplishment there. Yeah. So as I say, the athletic ability with this kid it's off the charts. And this is another kid that, like most college players, I know I say this a lot, but he's got a lot of upside. I mean, his best football is still to come, and I think he is a great fit for this defense. And like you said, you had the ability to see him in the Senior Bowl, and very impressed with him there. But I mean, he's a kid that you put on the film, and all he did was make plays. He runs well. Like you, his coverage ability. He probably won't be a great cover linebacker, but I think he'll be a good enough cover linebacker to definitely play at the next level. At the very worst, you may take him out on passing situations, but to play the position of safety early in your career, it either means you can cover or it means you couldn't cover, so they moved you to linebacker because you're that more in the box type of safety that moves to linebacker. So he's got a little ways to go in the pass coverage, but again, a very athletic guy. He continues to get better. Every game you watch, you see more and more that you like about the kid. So
yeah, I'm with you. I think his best days are ahead of him, and I would love to see what his athleticism with the other guys on this defense could really do. And I do think this defense needs a little bit of being infused with more athleticism. I think it's lost a little bit over the last couple of years. And so adding a young talent like that and inside linebacker, I think is a bigger need than people are talking about. I know everybody wants to talk about the offensive line and quarterback, but that defense needs some talent as well.
Yeah, we got to fine tune the defense because as good as it was this year, it definitely was not as good as it's been in the past, and it's one of those things that you got to maintain because without doing what the defense has done for us for the past couple of years, especially if you have a young quarterback or a stopgap quarterback, if that defense falters, it's not going to be pretty. And the one other thing I like about Burks too is he's a very, very intelligent guy. He can come in and learn real quick. I believe he's an academic All-American. So, you always like those kind of kids because you kind of know what you're getting into when you're spending a lot of money on these guys. You like those smart kids that can come in and learn the defense quick. So
I like it. All right. Well, my 2 4th-round picks, I'll put them here together. Andrew Brown, a defensive end from Virginia, and Isaac Yiadom, a cornerback. Yeah. I feel bad because these are all Senior Bowl guys that I got a chance to really see up close. So maybe I have a little bit of a man crush on them just because I actually got to meet them and talk with these guys and get to know them a little bit more. So I feel more comfortable taking them, I guess.
Yeah.
But Andrew Brown,
those are the best guys in college football. So
yeah, exactly. But Andrew Brown, I think he is such a perfect fit for this defense. At that defense, that 5-tech defensive end, one gap shooting. Virginia asked him to do some 2-gap. I don't think that's quite his strength. But you let this guy get his first step and just go destroy people. He was just all over the place at the Senior Bowl. Offensive linemen stood no chance against this guy. I don't know if there was a defensive lineman. Maybe BJ Hill was a little bit better, but they play a little bit different style of game. And so I just feel like Andrew Brown's that better fit with the Broncos. And then Isaac Yiadom, probably the best coverage cornerback at the Senior Bowl. Couldn't catch jack squat. I think he maybe dropped 5, 6, 7 interceptions. I don't know how many it was, but he pretty much ran the route for the receiver, and he just couldn't catch it. But the fact that he was there, that was something special. So you can't really you can't fully fix hands, but you can make them a little bit better.
Yeah,
I guess is the.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're covering that well, you can drop some interceptions for him. I mean, you look at some of the better cornerbacks, like Ike Taylor couldn't catch, and his coverage skills were fairly, top notch at the NFL level. I mean, Carlos Rogers, there's a guy, I don't know if you remember him from Auburn.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he dropped so many interceptions, but I mean, you've got a guy like Carlos Rogers who covers really well and drops interceptions, or you got a guy like Delth O'Neal who covers very poor and he'll pick 7 to 10 passes off a year because he's getting thrown at, 100 times. So I think I like Yaidam. I think at the same time, I think he's a press cover guy. I mean, very physical guy. I fear that some team like the Seattle Seahawks are going to steal a guy like this, and he's going to be phenomenal for him. Andrew Brown, that's an interesting name. I'm glad you have him in your mock. I feel like Andrew Brown may go a little earlier after his Senior Bowl. I feel like he's a guy that, at times did not play well, and at other times played great. So there's some inconsistency there. But I think he would be a great fit for this defense. He could come in where he doesn't have to, have a huge role at first, but he can learn. But I think those are 2 solid 4th round picks there for you, Carl. I know in talking to you that, Yaidam was a guy that you just raved about. And I've heard from a couple of people how good he looked. And that Boston College secondary, I mean, they're really bringing some good players from that secondary to the NFL. So I think both of those are fairly good value at, pretty safe bet that's about where they're going to go. I could kind of see those guys, maybe going a little bit earlier because they had such good Senior Bowls. You put the tape on Andrew Brown. Sometimes you like what you see, sometimes you don't. But I think you put him in a situation like Denver, I think the guy can, you're going to get the most out of his potential. So I like those 2 picks. I know I've liked your mock this whole time, but again, you know what you like when you see it. So you and I are on the same page here.
Right. And it helps. I think we talk about football so much that we've kind of developed the same eye for what we like to see.
We probably convince each other a lot. Just like, when I've been huge on James Washington since probably mid freshman year with him. And you've probably heard me talk about him so much, you were probably tired of it. And, you went to the Senior Bowl and you came back agreeing with me. So I like to hear stuff like that. And
yeah, he was another guy kind of like Baker Mayfield. There's just things I needed to see him do. It's not that I didn't think that he could do it. It just, I hadn't always seen him do it on tape because of the offense that they ran there at Oklahoma State.
Yep.
And so to see him do it live and just dominate people left and right, to see his hands be as good as they were, to see his quickness, to see his route running, that was kind of one of my big questions with him.
Yep.
I left there going, yep, this is a guy. If we took him in the 2nd round, I would be pretty happy about it. Because again, we're wanting to add weapons, and he would be a huge weapon added to this Bronco offense.
Yeah, he would definitely be a playmaker. And the only downfall of taking James Washington is I feel like, it would be a little bit of a knock on Carlos Henderson and the development for him. But like you said, we're in dire need of playmakers. And if the worst case scenario is they both turn out to be playmakers, then it's a good problem to have. So,
right. You can find ways to get both of them on the field and both of them some opportunities.
Yep, absolutely. And Isaiah McKenzie's another guy we can't forget. He had a rough rookie season, but there were times when, he looked like the punt returner that we've lacked for years, but, he pulled some Trendon Holidays on us too. So he's a guy that, if he can grow and hang on to the ball this offseason, he could be a huge boost for us. Cause I think a lot of people have kind of, have given up on him already just because of the issues he had this year. He had a couple bonehead plays and he took some chances on punt returns that drove people nuts, but that's also a rookie for you. The transition from your rookie year to your 2nd year is huge. And if he can make that jump and learn from those, he could definitely be another guy, another weapon for us.
Yeah. If he can put all of this past year behind him, I think that's going to be a big test for him.
Yes,
because
mentally it was tough on him this year for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, his biggest plays happened in the first about 5 weeks of the season.
Yep.
He was confident. He really he was too aggressive. That was his biggest biggest thing there, but he got away with it those first 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden he stopped getting away with it, and you just could tell he lost it. And so how he bounces back, it kind of reminds me of Raheem Moore.
Yes.
How he bounced back from his big goof. Those are the defining moments for players for sure.
Yes, for sure.
But moving on to my final pick here that we'll talk about today, 5th round, Javon Roland Jones of Arkansas State. This is a guy, I just kind of got my eyes on him here recently, and I was trying to figure out, I knew I needed another pass rusher because Shane Ray, like you said, he's just been not what you hoped for, and can't trust him to stay healthy. Shaq Barrett could be gone. Aaron Lynch is just kind of a stopgap guy. And so this is kind of the developmental guy. He's maybe not the perfect fit size-wise. He's a little bit short for that outside linebacker spot. But he jumps off the page when you watch him on tape. And the record that he set, he tied the record for most sacks in a college career with Terrell Suggs. So this guy knows how to get after the quarterback. And like you said, the Broncos just did not have that pass rush this last year. This guy has got a relentless motor. He was Sun Belt Player of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. And I know it's not the biggest college conference, but again, you can find talent anywhere. And so he's just kind of a guy here late in the draft. Take a chance on him, see if maybe he has something there that has been overlooked by a lot of teams.
Yeah, and I think it's a good round to take a guy like Roland Jones. I mean, pure pass rusher. Like you said, the size may not match up, but it's also very low risk at this stage. It kind of reminds me of a couple years ago. We took the kid from Western Kentucky. He had the knee issue.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember his name off the top of my head. Never played for us, but he was an undersized pass rusher that had the knee injury coming out. But Javon Roland Jones, I mean, pure pass rusher. I mean, I in my opinion, this is the kind of guy that in our defense is a perfect fit for us just because of what we have around him. He doesn't have to come in right away. He can strictly come in, learn how to rush the passer. That's what he does best. Doesn't have to come in and fill a role, as a starter. See what he's got, see how he develops. He's definitely raw. But he can come in and at the very least, learn from a Von Miller, put him around a good defense. You put him on a team that doesn't have the pass rushers we have, I think he fails. You put him on a team like us, and I think he can really take off. He's got that 3-4. But when I think of a guy like this, I think succeeding in somebody like the Steelers defense or something like that. It always depends on what team you go to, what scheme you go to. But I think we are definitely a good situation for him. And I think it's of a good round to take a guy like him. So
the guy you were thinking about was Quanterra Smith.
I knew it started with a Q. Quanterra Smith.
Yep, I just remembered that one. But yeah, he was the guy that I was hoping could really turn into something. I liked what I saw from him, but again, that knee issue, injuries are that you just never know when they're going to show up with a player or if they're going to be lingering.
Yep, sometimes they linger forever, and unfortunately for Quanterra Smith, I believe he signed with somebody after us, maybe Jacksonville, but
something like that.
He just never fully healthy.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember this, Carl, but back in the day when we drafted Paul Taviese from Marshall in the 2nd round, never played a down for us because of a knee issue. We moved up in the 2nd round, and he never played a down for us. So,
it's unfortunate. You hate to hear that for these players. Is that back in 2001?
I want to say it was 2001. I think that timing's probably about right. I would say you're correct.
Oh, well, that's the joy and the sorrow of the draft.
Absolutely.
You could do all the research possible, and a player that you are as high on as can be never pans out. There's just something that happens, something that's not quite there. And another guy that you've never even heard of all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and does something. So that's why I think that's why we love the draft.
Yeah. A story about that. Chris Harris was a guy, when we signed him as an undrafted free agent, I remember having a friend. It was actually George Springsteen from our draft, our sports forum that we met at. He'd asked me, we'd signed three defensive backs: James Rogers of Michigan, Darnell Bing of Rutgers, and Chris Harris of Kansas. And I talked up, Rogers and Darnell Bing pretty good, and said I wasn't so high on Chris Harris. I think Rogers got cut within 2 weeks. Bing got cut, maybe during preseason, and Chris Harris turned into a Pro Bowl cornerback for us. So sometimes you just never know. Sometimes guys will surprise you, and sometimes those guys that you really like just don't turn out quite like you think they will. So
right. Well, I can say it. I mean, everybody on this show knows I was a big Paxton Lynch fan, but I never thought, hey, this guy's going to go and care more about Madden football than he is about the Denver Broncos. I couldn't know that in the evaluation process. All I knew was what I saw watching him, and I saw the tools, and I fell in love with the tools. That's why I think this year I'm sitting here saying no to Josh Allen, because I'm going, I've seen that before. I've been in this story before, and it did not end well for me. It ended with egg on my face. So
yeah, I like him. And then you got Nick, who every NFL Sunday when the Chiefs are on, you get a text message about Chris Jones. So
I feel like he should just go marry that guy.
Yeah. I think he's pretty much turning into a Chiefs fan because of Chris Jones. So
oh my goodness, that kid. He gets his crushes, that's for sure. We all do.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in Nick because every time I do a mock draft, he always wants to draft for the Chiefs. So I don't know about him.
Yeah, he's a little different. But we put up with him. No, he's a good guy. But
so we better talk good about him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Well, Scott, man, I really do appreciate you coming on our show and joining us here on the Huddle Up podcast. And we've been meaning to get you on here for the last year, and just to share your information, your wisdom, because we both, Nick and I both look to you a lot for draft information and just your eye for scouting players. So yeah, we've just really appreciated all that you've helped us with, and like I said, helping just bring us together for this podcast. And so again, thank you for coming on, man.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I will say that I feel the same way about you guys. I mean, I've learned a lot from you and Nick, and it's nice to have those people that you can talk draft with. I'm glad that you and Nick got to know each other, because I will say that there's sometimes when Nick wants to talk draft and I'm busy at work and I feel bad because I can't keep up with him. And that's when, he can kind of rely on you for those draft chats. So the guy loves his draft, and that's what I love about him. So
yeah. It always impresses me when I talk to other people and they say, oh yes, Nick's been talking to me all day about the draft. I'm going, well, he was talking to me all day about the draft. How does he have time for all these people? But no, he does. He loves the draft more than anybody I know, for sure.
I'm probably getting 10 mocks a week sometimes from Nick on Denver Broncos mocks, and asking me what I think of them. And sometimes I'm busy and I try to reply to him, and I try to do the best I can. But sometimes he's sending you so many that I got to step back and do my work at my real job. And I like the passion he has. It reminds me of me when I was probably about my college years, where I was constantly, my mind was on the draft. And it makes me really miss when I had all that time in the world I'm not saying Nick has all that time, but it makes me miss when I, was in college and I was constantly researching the draft and, talking to players, interviewing them. And I'm still doing some of that, but, to the extent of what it was. But the draft is a fun process. And I'm glad there's other people out there that are like me, like you and Nick. So it's definitely been an honor to get to know you guys and be able to share and learn from you guys. So,
yeah, well, we definitely feel the same, man. And I just want to let all of our listeners know, I would highly recommend going and following Scott. You can find him on Twitter at BlitzingDog3. And of course, you can find myself at Carl Demler MHH. And of course, you can make sure to head over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of Scout.com and the CBS Sports Digital. And you can find mine and my co-writers articles, as we're going to have a lot of draft content coming out over the next about 3-4 months. It's going to be article after article, podcast after podcast. We're going to give you as much draft content as we possibly can. It's going to be fun, but just get ready, buckle up. If you have any questions or comments about the draft that you would love to share with us, just hit us up on Twitter. You can follow the Huddle Up podcast by subscribing to iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, as well as you can check us out on YouTube. Nick, I know especially, loves to go on there and respond to all of you. So get on there, write your comments, let them know how much you dislike this draft that we just did right here, or this offseason. Let us know how terrible it was or how great it was. We'd love to hear that too. But you can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, and of course at Huddle Up Pod. Again, please be sure to subscribe and rate us and reach out to us, as we love interacting with fellow Bronco fans. For Scott Porter, I'm Carl Dumler, wrapping up another episode of the Huddle Up podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Go Broncos.